Hey guys, the topic. So my critical introduction is on the topic forced migration, which is topic 8 and week 9, I guess, in our unit. So, in my own words, forced migration is the movement or nomadicism of a people due to conflicting life circumstances that can either be in the form of social, political, or economic factors. This comes in many forms, but some of the most common ones are war, famine, a lack of human rights, and religious discrimination or racially based discrimination, and so on. It occurs on a globalized scale, and at large, it is subjective of people who live in developing nations as opposed to those who live in Western civilization. So now there's actually a lot of examples for this. A few I've chosen out of our readings for this week. So the first, there is one that depicts stereotypical representations of people who are subjected to this practice. And this comes in the form of rural dwellers, ethnic minorities, and indigenous peoples at large. And so there's a stereotype, there's an identity created for these people, and since events such as September 11, the way we view these people has changed. So people once were prisoners or on the outcasts of society, and now seen as a national threat, which is enforcing again a new stereotype. Since the end of the Cold War, there has been an increasing amount of refugees from 2.4 million in 1975 to 8.2 million in 1993 at the end of the Cold War, which is significant in that there was a lot of displaced peoples who were persecuted and because of their beliefs and because of what had happened. And this is conveyed as a social shift or a change in normalcy, and what we perceive as normalcy. Moving on. So this is another example from the text. There's a British mining company which suggested an open pit coal mine in Bangladesh that would displace thousands and destroy fertile agricultural land which they used for their daily lives, which will cause food shortages and famine and etc. They exemplify their legitimacy by stating that they're complying with the global frameworks of human rights, and yet their executive director Gary Lai of GCM Resources said that the coal under the ground is worth more than growing rice on the surface, which is kind of asking the question: is economic growth for an already wealthy nation more important than the lower levels of society and the people that live there? So the people who have got lower socioeconomic status, is their wants and needs irrelevant compared with that of a developing nation or a big conglomerate? Further examples come from the Honduras 2020 plan, which was an initiative to create 200,000 textile jobs, and which would triple the exports that they gained from this to 7.4 billion US dollars, which is just a way of mitigation against forced migration. And this is an occurrence with America, so it's kind of evident of the relationship between South America and the US state. So there was $500 million worth of aid from Washington to Mexico. However, this in itself was still evident that there was an air of discontent and people were still not happy with the position that they've been put in. Wage disputes, amongst other things, were causing families to seek new opportunities and new beginnings for their children rather than stick it out in the current climate that they are under. The lack of financial generation and so on, the financial profit, has meant that migrants were fleeing still to the US, which in turn caused now President Donald Trump to suggest that he may cut ties with countries such as Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. So it just kind of illustrates the fractured relationship between these nations. Another major example of this is the Rohingya crisis, which the Rohingya are an ethnic minority or a variation of Islam, which have been known in the recent decade to flee religious and political persecution of the Rakhine State, which is a mostly Buddhist country, to countries such as Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, and or Thailand. These peoples have been denounced as citizens, been put under various government restrictions within their country, such as marriage, family planning, employment, education, and so on, religious choice. And their poverty rates have been far and beyond exceeding that of the normal rate, which is 37.5% for the rest of the country, as opposed to them, which is 78%. And as recently as the last 2 years, 2017/18, a militant group with an affiliation to the Rohingya religion, I guess, claimed responsibility for attacks on government circles, which has led to a form of civil war, and got them the label or the stigma of being called terrorists, which has caused thousands to flee as well as thousands to perish in forms of violence. And so, yes, from this, I've developed a few focus questions that can kind of bring together the ideas that I've posed in the various other notions that I just mentioned. So the main three focus questions that I created are: why is forced migration a more common occurrence in developing nations as opposed to Western civilization? What is the best form of mitigation or combat with regards to this issue? And lastly, what can be learnt and adapted from this issue with regards to mending and forging global relationships? So I hope that sheds a little bit of light upon this issue for you guys, and I know delving into a little bit deeper helped me out a fair bit, so thank you, and good luck.